Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya Master Anne-Marie Young. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. We can't join us today, so we'll be looking forward to talking to him again next week, I'm sure. But Anne-Marie is like a trooper, trying desperately to connect in today with a troublesome internet. We'll just see if you can hang in there, but we're glad you could be here for this part. Who knows how much more to be here.
Thrilled to be here. No, I'll just keep trying. I'll just keep coming back in. I'll go, I'll come. I'll go, I'll come. Whatever it is, I'll still be here.
You are persistent. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, that's good. How's it going over there in the UK? Well, first, you guys just went through an exciting time there. You got the coronation, but what's going on with you over there?
What's going on with me? I actually started a new podcast with Stacey Clinay.
You did?
We did.
Oh my goodness. When did you start that?
We did it on Saturday. It was very rough. It was very raw, but we've started it. I don't know when it's going to be on, but watch this space.
Oh, I got to catch that. Yeah. Let me know when it's published, okay?
Yeah.
In fact, let everybody know. Yeah, let everybody know.
Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll get her on the show one day and we'll plug what we're doing.
How can I not listen to two of my favorite people? I mean, come on.
Love you.
Oh, I love you too. And we do have a special guest joining us today. Her name is Rachel Lavin. Lavin or Lavin? I didn't check before we got going here. Which is it, Rachel? Rachel, can you hear me? Oh, Rachel is not hearing us. That's not a good thing. Let me just send her a little note to log out and log in again. See that note. Look at the note over there. Yeah, okay, I think she's looking at that. Good.
Yeah, she's got it. She's got
it. Every once in a while, we get weird stuff happening on StreamYard. Just things happen, but it's okay. One of the reasons we use it is because we can do all this intros and outros and broadcasting, all that kind of thing. Okay, here she comes. No, but sometimes you pay a price for that with things not working right. Okay, can you hear us now?
Yay!
Yay! All right.
I was like, what's going on? I can't hear you guys.
Do I need to do something? Yeah. Okay, so rewind one more time. Rachel, first of all, you got to clue me in on the pronunciation of your last name. Is it Lavin or Lavin?
It's Lavin. Thank you.
Lavin. Okay. All right. And we're going to be doing a little training today because she's a trainer. Well, she's also a health coach.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. But
I need to sign up for that.
What kind of training are we talking about? Are we talking about in-person kind of training?
I do both virtual and in-person.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. How long have you been doing that?
For 23 long years.
Wow. Okay. When you say long, that almost sounds like it's rough.
It can be, and there's been moments, and I really kind of love that I'm shifting careers, staying in wellness, but shifting a little bit and moving away from the in-person personal training. But it will never actually leave my stratosphere because wellness is all encompassing, right?
Okay, that's fair enough. Well, tell you what, we're kind of doing it in reverse order. Why don't you just give us the biography? Give us the 1 minute biography. How did you get to where you're doing right now?
Okay, well, Body Love Educator comes from a very personal place. I have struggled with my own weight gains, losses, restrictive dieting for as long as I can remember. And I had this epiphany when I turned 40 that I really wanted to spend the rest of my life being happy. And I knew that wasn't going to be it. And it was such an interesting place to be, being a fitness professional and still feeling so poorly about my own self. So having to do the work, kind of take a step back, look at who I was and who I wanted to be, has taken some time, but it has been worth it. And now I really want to help women along with their journeys to find a better way to be fit, to be healthy, to eat well, and not feel like they're missing out on life.
So is it true that someone who gets into the health fitness arena often does that because they're trying to help themselves first? I mean, like, for instance, I know with psychotherapists often get into psychotherapy because they're trying to understand their own family dynamics. And then it just leads to a career. Is the same kind of thing happening in your field as well?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say that is the case for every single fitness professional out there, but it does happen. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So it becomes, well, it makes sense. I mean, that's actually a theme that plays out a lot, both here on the podcast with various people we've interviewed in a lot of different fields over the years, but also just in life in general. We go through life, we run into challenges of various kinds. Sometimes they can become really serious challenges. We can do crash and burn type routines. Then somewhere along the line, something happens and we find an answer, or we find multiple answers and it really works for us. And now all of a sudden, let's share it with the world. That's how careers are born, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. We'll do this the short way. We could do it the long way, but I think we'll do it the short way. Give us some tips. Okay. How do you, if you're somebody who's struggling with weight issues or whatever, where do you begin? How do you start this thing?
That's a great question. And I will have to say, and it's not the best answer, but the answer is it has to be the individuals where they feel comfortable. It could definitely be acknowledging, listen, I've been doing this my whole life and I'm tired of it. It could be, like you said, something just resonates at the right time and then it motivates them, like a call to action, if you will. But I think that for most women, we do this for most of our life. And then there comes a point where there has to be another way. And I think that for some people, it can start emotionally. Some people, it can start physically. But I think if we realize that those two roads have to meet and become one, then that's how we get the long-term results.
Which is ultimately what you're looking for anyway. You're looking for something that you can sustain, to use the modern terminology.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you find for yourself? What worked for you? What was your combination?
I really had to go back and figure out what was my trauma, what caused me to feel this way about my body, what caused me to grow up thinking that I wasn't in the right body or I didn't deserve to be in this world because I had a different body. So for me, it was very tied to my emotions. It was tied to how I thought about myself and how I felt about myself, and more importantly, how I talked about myself. So I had to really go back and kind of unpack all that and start the process anew and start talking kindly to myself. And I had to say things to myself such as, you are beautiful, your body is perfect right now, and know that for a while I wasn't going to quite believe that. I just had to keep repeating it until I did.
I don't know, Anne-Marie, this kind of sounds familiar. I mean, what do you think?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it before.
But it's something that I so struggle with my body image, and I'll say these things to me and I can't get to that belief place. Now I can say things like positive things. I'll focus on, oh, you've got good skin, or you look good for your age, or you've got lovely hair, or you're really clever, you're really kind. But when I go to the whole body thing, I really struggle. So how do you break these barriers?
That's a great question. And I think that if you just give yourself a little longer, instead of focusing on this isn't working, which is okay. You know, I think the best recipe is to find out what works for you. Maybe the things that you're saying to yourself don't really apply to you. So maybe think about, what is the one thing about your body that you are so uncomfortable with, or that you dislike the most, and start there. Even if it's, my arms are beautiful, whatever. If you go around every day saying, I've got the flabbiest, fattest, ugliest, grossest arms, then start there and say, my arms are beautiful, my arms are capable, my arms are able to lift my children or grab pasta from the cupboard. I mean, so break it down in the most simplest ways and just put that on repeat.
I love that, grabbing the pasta from the cupboard. That was good. Yeah.
It's a good visual, right?
It is, yeah.
And I do that. Exactly. I do that with my legs, because I keep saying, I'll always moan about my legs, and then I'll go, but they work and they get me from A to B, and I'll try and focus on the positive side of things. So as long as it's perseverance, Rachel, I'll keep having a go.
Okay, good.
I know one thing I've been doing a lot lately is I've been messing with pre-recording my own voice doing these kinds of affirmations as a way to reprogram my mind.
I like that.
Yeah. Emery will know. You know, Emery, the music that David Strictly uses in his meditations. He let me make a copy of that for my own stuff, so I use that as a background for my my affirmation meditations. And that combination, well, first of all, it's a great way to put myself to sleep at night. It's like very calming, meditative type sound. But every night I'm playing my recording back to myself, and I don't even hear it all the time, but subconsciously I'm hearing it. And over time,
it's going in.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to even identify exactly what it is that I know is happening, but I know I can just tell like my attitude about the things that I've written into my tape, how I feel about them, how I experience them. And I've been doing it now for about, when did I start doing that? I think I started doing it about 6-7 months ago. And during that 6 and 7 month period, I mean, it's not a real long period of time, but I can kind of sense things are shifting in the areas that I'm talking about in my meditations.
So, I love that.
Yes.
I thought I'd
share Post-it notes. Don't, discount them. Post-it notes, ever places where you look every day, and that helps too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, really anything that you can reprogram yourself with, right?
Right. I mean, it has to be something, if you think about it, this is something you've said to yourself for years upon years. So for you to expect it to shift and change overnight is not fair to yourself. Mm-hmm. That's unreasonable. You have to be kind to yourself and be patient.
Yeah, I kind of look at it the other way around entirely. It's like, I'm kind of amazed when it shifts at all. That seriously, that to me, the hardest part is, can I just keep going long enough to see a change? Can I keep going long enough to see that something has moved? If I can do that, that's like, oh, okay. That actually gets my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, well, when you're working with clients, like you mentioned before, I imagine you do get different people with different expectations, different ways of looking at it, different perspectives, different hopes and dreams, different, everything. I mean, the whole thing is going to be different, and you kind of lay that out, in the way that you answered the first question. But that also means you as a coach, as a trainer, you're challenged because you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I help this person where they're at? Mm-hmm. I mean, tell us a little bit about what that's like from your perspective.
Well, early on in my career, I would get very flustered. I would get very upset with myself. But now I've learned that everyone is different. Everyone's approach to their own health and wellness is different, and how they absorb information is different. So, like you said, I love that expression, meet people where they're at, because that is such a valuable tool for someone in my industry. Change takes strength, change takes time, and change takes courage. So until someone is ready for that, because their whole life is going to change, right? When they adopt new beliefs about themselves. So you have to prepare them that things are going to change, things are going to be different, it's not going to be easy, but being on the other side is such a powerful thing, and it's just so beautiful that I just am there to support you. Keep going, you can do this, and it's okay if you have a bad day. It's okay if you fall back into your old behaviors, because it's unreasonable for you to think that it's not going to happen like that. So I love to tell people that my way isn't the only way, and that there's so many different approaches to how you can do this.
Both as the person doing the work and as the coach, both sides, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because you're kind of like walking a line. On the one hand, you're trying to help hold them accountable, and on the other hand, you're trying to be their cheerleader.
Yeah. Well, I've learned early-ish on in my career that I can't do it for you. As much as I would love to, I can't. So it's best for me as the coach and the personal trainer to set those clear boundaries as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you're working with a client too, I imagine one of the first things that comes up is you're doing your initial, I don't know what you call it or how you think of it, but you're doing your initial consult. You're doing your initial contact with them. And that's where you're kind of laying out. This is based on talking to all the different other coaches who I've talked to over the years. You're kind of laying out, okay, what's the game plan with this person, right?
Yes, but my approach is a little different. Like, I don't expect in 1 hour or 45 minutes of meeting someone for the first time to understand them. So I definitely tell them that I will have questions, that we're going to have to try a few things. Some things may stick, some things don't. But I'm here to hear you where you're at, to talk to you about what you'd like to accomplish and figure out how we can get there.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is a large portion of the plan, so to speak, comes from the client.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's their life, right? It's how they want to see themselves living their best life. And only they can do that for themselves. I'm here, like you said, I like that word, cheerleader. I'm here to be your support system, and I'm here to not let you give up on yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the accountability side. Okay, ready for step 2? Ready for step 3? How about step 4? Okay. Actually, that kind of touches on something we're going to bring up on tomorrow's show. We're going to do kind of an in-depth thing on the topic I'm about to mention. But different people have different takes on it. I'm curious to know what your take is. Many coaches believe in setting let's go for the gusto. Let's go for that big goal. This is where we're trying to aim to, and so forth. And other people say, well, that's great, but instead of thinking about that big goal, let's look at what's the little milestone we can reach next and do little tiny milestones along the way. Where are you on that debate?
I think it's very important to have that big goal, like right here, so you can see it and you know that's what you're striving for. But I do believe that in breaking it down into steps is the best way to achieve that big goal. I think if you just try to go full throttle and skip some steps, that's when things can go awry and it doesn't happen the way you would like it to.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So tell us also a little bit about some of your influences as a coach, because I mean, most coaches, they either go through a training program or they have, certain authors that they follow, certain leading spokesmen and so forth. Where do your influences come from?
Well, I've been very lucky to have some amazing mentors in my career. And I think there's 2 books in my world that I am so grateful that I have come across, and I always reference them because they're so valuable. One is The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. I love that book. I love his story. I love the message. And then the second book is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I think even though the messages are a little similar in how I think that they teach you principles that we're way too hard on ourselves, and we are getting in our own way a lot of the time. And it's just a nice way to live our life, to be kind to ourselves and be kind to others. And I love that.
Yeah, that's something that I talk about quite a bit, how if we were to treat our best friends the way we treat ourselves, we wouldn't have best friends because we are so rough on ourselves. And that's a habit that can be kind of challenging to reverse just because we do it so frequently. Talk about being, ingrained into the nervous system. That's one of those things that can be really deeply ingrained.
Absolutely. And it's interesting for me to hear people's backstory of where that comes from. It could be a series of events, or it could be somebody said something to you one time and it literally created this whole chaotic event. And so it is interesting for me to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah. Do you find that in your experience that, again, this is where there are often 2 different viewpoints, 2 different camps. Some people argue that most of these really deeply challenging things stem from early childhood and those influences, those very earliest influences of early childhood. Other people say, well, they kind of come at various stages all along. It's not just the early childhood area. And some people say, well, it isn't so much the other influences as what we're doing to ourselves. Where are you in that debate?
Wow. I've never been asked that question quite in that way, but I will say I probably agree with a little bit of all 3. I know childhood trauma is a real thing and is very deep-seated and charters behavior for a very long time. But like I mentioned earlier, you can be in a relationship in your 20s and your partner says something to you negatively at that age, and that becomes a whole decade of stuff. So I do agree. It could be something so early. It could be something later in life. But what I do believe is that behavior teaches us how to treat ourselves. So then we're just piling that on and piling that on. And it's very sad that, this country is so consumed with mental illness right now and suicide. And it's just getting to be to the point where we have to do something. We have to make it acceptable and okay for people to have feelings and emotions and want better for themselves.
Yeah, not just this country. I mean, I think you could probably identify almost any culture around the world. Some perhaps are less open, so you just don't hear as much about it. But yeah, I think it's pretty much epidemic anywhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you are working with your clients, I know that you are doing this in a way where you're kind of working one step at a time. You said that earlier. You don't try to do everything based on what happens in the first hour, the first meeting. But as you're working with them over time, you are getting a sense of stuff. And in that sense, you're also kind of laying out the plan or working with them to lay out the plan. But do you have is there a strategy that you follow that's more, in-depth and specific than that description? That's a fairly general description. So that's why I'm kind of curious.
No, that's a fair question. I think when it came to my personal training, when that was my sole focus, my sole career, I would focus on, because 9 out of 10 times when someone new would come to me, what would be their goal? I'm sure you can imagine it was always weight loss, right?
Sure.
And I don't begrudge someone to want to feel good and look good. I don't. But what I tried to teach and what I still try to teach my clients is there is a wholesome way, meaning eating whole foods, having lots of foods to choose from, moving your body in a way that feels good to get to that goal, as opposed to crash dieting, restrictive dieting, isolating yourself to get to that goal, right? One is obviously going to take a little longer, but you're going to feel better and you're going to instill habits. So that's how I would approach my personal training. Now that I'm focusing more on body love educating, that is a whole different animal. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning on how to deal with my groups of women and individual women, because the one thing I do get feedback a lot is people think that they can't talk about their real feelings in front of me because they think I'm going to, shame, 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 don't say anything bad about your body. But I hope I don't come across like that. I'm just trying to figure this out and be as open-minded and open-hearted as I can. I do want to teach women that speaking kindly to yourself does pay off, but I have to be patient and figure this out.
Do you think that the best coach is the one who's been there where you're trying to get to?
Yes. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but yes.
Well, why shouldn't you be saying that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you can see that the whole world is inundated with coaches now, and I guarantee you there are some people out there that are coaching women who have never had a weight issue. And that's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being an empathetic person and a compassionate person. So I don't begrudge anybody, but when someone is bawling their eyes out and telling me they're sick and tired of this, I can say, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. And I can mean that.
Personally, I do believe that it's stronger. You're right. I think anybody who's empathetic can help anybody else. But I think it is a stronger thing when the coach has been through the same kind of thing as the client, particularly if it has a high degree of trauma associated with it. Because very often, if the degree of trauma is high enough, the client can actually believe that the other person can't really help them because they don't know what it's like. You've never had to deal with that. I recall a story that one of my other co-hosts told me one time. He works a lot with young boys in the foster care system. And there was one boy he was talking to for a first time. It was a first consult. And the kid had been through the ringer in so many different ways and was very, very skeptical. He was skeptical of Joel because this is like, the umpteenth person he had to talk to, and nothing was ever improving in his life and so forth. And he said something very snarky about how, well, you've never had to eat out of a dumpster. And Joel said, well, actually I have. And the kid said, what?
Yeah.
But it really, it broke through just because they had the shared common experience. Very unpleasant one, but a shared common experience.
Well, that is the one thing I realized about in the work that I'm doing is that it's so important that you don't feel alone. I think so many of us go through this life thinking that we're in this by ourselves, and that's just not true.
In fact, it's really kind of eye-opening. That's one of the things I get by doing this podcast, because I've been doing it for a little over 10 years now with lots and lots of people that I've talked to.
Mm-hmm.
I think after a while, you get a sense for just how common problems are that people feel like no one else has.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the commonality is almost scary.
Yeah.
Very consistent, very continuous. It's almost amazing that we live in a time where we're all so connected, and yet we still can come to that conclusion that nobody else is experiencing what I'm going through. You know what I mean?
I do. I agree with you.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think that a lot of times we as human beings, as much as we want connection, as much as we want friendships, it's very hard for us to trust. And so sharing our own stories is not as common as you would think. You have to be in an environment where you feel safe to do that. And so with my Body Love Biracial, that's what I'm really striving to create, is a safe space. Because I know that you're trusting me with a lot of different things that have gone on in your life. And you need to believe that you're talking to somebody who not only you relate to, but who you can trust.
What do you think makes a space safe?
Definitely knowing that I'm not being judged for what I'm saying, knowing that I'm not alone in what I'm saying, and knowing that what I'm telling you is between you, me, and if it's a group situation. But if it's one-on-one, then it would just be the two of us. But if it's a group, obviously the people in the group have all agreed that what stays there or what's said there stays there.
Right. Yeah, which is important in any kind of therapeutic / assistant coaching, whatever you want to call it, groups setting. You have to have that level of a closed society, kind of. It's a closed community.
Hmm.
Yeah. And yet that kind of setting can also be very supportive for that very exact same reason, right? Because, I mean, from what I've understood just from talking to people over the years, people often get their best friends from those kinds of groups. They get the people they hang out with the most, they talk with the most, they identify with the most. And so support actually goes beyond support and starts to become true community.
Yes, absolutely. I'm in a couple of women's groups that are just, we're all spread out all over the world, and it's just the most supportive space, and I'm so grateful that I found it. So, yes, I agree with that.
What role do you think that plays in helping people get where they want to go?
Well, when you feel supported, when you feel encouraged, you don't give up. When you feel alone and you feel like no one understands, that's when you give up and you don't keep going. So I think that's what the whole connection with other women, and for men who connect as well. I think to connect with people keeps you positive. It keeps you going towards your goals. It keeps you, when you do have those breakthroughs and it's not so fun and you have to deal with those emotions, you know that you're not alone.
I think that's true actually in a wide area of topics and types of investigation or life interest areas. Could be, something related to careers or to, personal relationships or to finances or to health or to, you can just keep naming stuff. But the fact, actually there's research to back it too. I like to cite this study every once in a while because it's a study that I really wish would get publicized. Nobody needs to publicize it anywhere, but I seem to be like the only person who knows about it. I don't know if you're familiar with Sean Aker. He's one of the spokesmen of the positive psychology movement. But he did a study when he was at Harvard in which he was trying to identify what it takes to succeed, because he's working with these Harvard students who are all, they're overachievers, they're overdriven, they're in a whole group of people where everybody else is now just as good as they are. They were at the top of their class, now they're some of them are at the bottom of the class, like, oh my God, I can't handle this. The stress levels are, up the wazoo. And he's trying to help them, understand that here's what it's going to take for you to succeed, because you're also success driven. So he did this study to kind of identify what is it, what are the factors that we can look at to identify whether or not somebody's going to succeed with whatever it is they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And he came up with this long survey. I guess about 1/5 of the entire population at Harvard participated in the survey. So it was a really big deal. And he couldn't find anything. There were no correlations except for one question that he threw in as an afterthought just before he issued the survey. And the question was about social connectedness. Mm. And what he learned from that particular question is that there is a 0.7 correlation between your level of connectedness, socially speaking, and your success with whatever it is you want in life, which for people who don't know statistics doesn't sound like a lot. But by comparison, the correlation between smoking cigarettes and getting cancer is 0.44. So it's twice the correlation of smoking and cancer. So it's a very strong correlation. And what it's really saying is that factor all by itself has a 70% chance of determining your success or failure. I mean, that's startling. You don't get that kind of stuff from surveys. Most surveys, most studies, they don't give you that kind of result, like where it's just off the chart in terms of that kind of success, but there it is.
Right.
So when we look at that in terms of what you're doing, when you're working with groups of people who are trying to achieve a personal success in an area that they have failed at. That's why they're in the group in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. That's where that kind of connectedness, this is my feeling on it. That's where that kind of connectedness is going to like zoom to the top in terms of how important it is. Just because you're dealing with something that you couldn't do it with before. You just couldn't succeed before. Now you're getting a chance to succeed.
Right. Well, that is a very positive outlook, and I love it.
Good. I personally found it to be one of the most amazing things. I still can't believe that it hasn't gotten any attention. And the only reason I know about it, Sean doesn't even put it in any of his books. Figure that one out. It doesn't even appear. The only place that I've ever seen it, he did a book tour on his most famous book was called The Happiness Advantage. He was doing a book tour on that. And in one of his stops, he ended up on PBS, on the television network. Right. And did a special. And at the end of the special, after he had done all the presentation about the book, he had like this little after section in which he mentioned this survey. It's the only time I've ever seen it mentioned anywhere.
Okay.
So
maybe he's holding on to it.
Well, he's been holding on to it for about 10 years. I wish he would stop hanging on to it and get it out there. I mean, come on. But wow, yeah, that's just, it continues to blow me away. I think that's why I keep mentioning it. So let's get back to the specific topic of weight and weight management and weight loss. A couple things come to my mind about that. First of all, one thing that often crops up is, particularly in law of attraction circles, is, well, you got to focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. And so people sometimes get critical about, well, you don't want to think about it as weight loss because now you're focusing on weight. You don't want to have that focus anymore. And I'm not 100% sure that's the best approach, but I'm kind of curious to know what's your take on that.
I'm 100% in agreement with that should not be the focus.
Okay.
Because the more you focus on it, let's put it in this way. The more you attach yourself to an outcome, I'm sure you have experienced, it doesn't have to be, I'm sure you've experienced this in your life, the further it goes away from you, right? So if you focus on something and you put all your time and energy that I have to do this, I have to do that, then all these things start to invade that. And it gets further away from you, or the weight comes back on, or it keeps getting more and more and more. But if you just let it be and focus more on your overwhelming health, longevity, and wellness, and take into consideration all the things that it takes to keep someone healthy, which is the nourishing, the healthy whole foods, the movement and the rest and the less stress. That's when I'm sure you've heard this, like women are like, I'm trying to get pregnant. And the minute they just forget about it and let it go, that's when they get pregnant. It's the same concept. If you're just sitting there talking about, I have to lose all this weight, instead of, I would love to learn how to eat better. I want to cook. I want to move. I want to hike. I want to do all these things, and let the weight loss be, afterthought is not the word I'm looking for, but after effect, I guess, is, or a natural occurrence for all the good things you're doing for yourself. So I would have to say to you, I 100% agree that weight loss And I even hate that term because it's created by the diet industry, which wants you to always be on a diet. So we can say weight management, I guess, until I find a better word. But that, to me, it should be the focus.
Yeah, terminology, that's often the biggest part of it, isn't it? Because so much of the terminology is negatively focused, negatively oriented. And then trying to figure out, okay, so what's the flip side of that? That's challenging.
It is challenging. And there's so many words out there. And it's just like, whatever. I can't keep up with all the words. So I don't even try.
Yeah, I hear you. It is one of my favorite things to do during conversations here on the program. You know, somebody will, not so much here, not in this conversation, but somebody will be, a guest will be talking about whatever it is they're talking about, and everything's in terms of, well, we don't want this, we don't want that, we don't want that, we don't want that. So I'm asking myself, okay, so what do you want? Right. And can you actually phrase that without reference to the things that you don't want, which is not always easy to do.
Yeah. But that like we were talking about in the beginning of this conversation, we are so ingrained to be negative, especially about ourselves. It takes a conscious effort to think positively, to talk positively, and then to act positively. And it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable at first, because I remember when I was doing that, I was just like, oh my God, this is so stupid. But the more I did it and I didn't give up, the more it just became a part of me. And now I am positive, but I'm not like, I try to explain this in a way that makes sense to people. Like, I live a positive life, but shit still happens and I still have to deal with that. But instead of me feeling like my world is crashing down on me, it's like, okay, this isn't great, but how can I deal with this and then move on and get back to all the other things? So it is definitely a learning curve. It's a learning process, but I know with practice that you can do it too.
It's basically changing your perspective about the shit.
Yes. That's why I love that expression, shit happens, because it will always happen. Mm. It will always happen. It's how you perceive it. It's how you deal with it. It's how you think about it. And more importantly, it's like, how do you take action? And that's, to quickly go back to Michael Singer, his book, The Untethered Soul, is such a valuable book in that specific space, because he talks about that all the time. The more we have problems with life, it's like, if you imagine you're this little person on a planet spinning around, like, what control do you really think you have over anything? And that puts it in perspective for you. It's like, you don't have as much control as you think you do.
One of the things that we like to talk about a lot is we may not have control over what happens, but we have a lot of control over how we're going to respond to it. Mm-hmm. In fact, I would go so far as to say we have all the control over how we're going to respond. Yeah. That might be a little bit too radical for some people, but I think it's fair to say you can go that far.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that people are willing to. Just because you can do it doesn't mean they're going to say, well, yeah, I could do that. I've encountered people who are going to say, oh, no, it will always be this way. And they really believe that.
Right. But that's because they have not been handed the tools to assist them to think differently. And that's where I come in.
That's part of what that's what the coach's job is, to give them the tools, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine, again, I'm going to draw from the world of psychotherapy on this, because my ex-wife is a psychotherapist. I've known a lot of therapists. One of the things that a therapist has to learn fairly early on, if they don't want to go crazy, is their job is to give the tools. Their job is not to get people to use them.
I love that. That's true.
Right? Yeah.
I'm sure many of my therapists would agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, but it's a little bit, well, after you've been doing the work for a while, it's very freeing, but in the early stages, it's a little bit disconcerting. Like, what do you mean? My job is to help them get to wherever they want to get to. So it seems natural. You should be able to get them to, start using the tools.
Yes, I will say that's been a very interesting lesson from switching from personal trainer to a coach, because, my instinct is to fix. And when you're coaching someone into a new belief system or new actions, you have to, like you said, guide, provide the tools and let them get there. So it's definitely been an interesting couple of years for me too.
Well, it's also been an interesting last 30 minutes or so because Anne-Marie's been trying desperately to get connected here, right? And stay connected. She's actually gotten there. She's actually done it. But talk about having the tools and trying to get the tools, put the tools to work. That's what you've been doing for the last 30 minutes.
I was that person on the planet with no control. I might be a bit echoey because I've had to come to my kitchen.
That's all right. No problem. We can live with that. But yeah.
With the echo. But see, that's because she wants to be here. And so she tried everything that she knew how to do to be here. So I think that's pretty cool. Very cool.
I mean, that's what persistence is all about. Mm-hmm. You just keep going no matter what crap comes your way. Well, screw that crap. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to get there somehow. I don't know how.
Right. And I think it's so important to recognize sometimes that it's just as valuable to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and let this go for today. It's not working. Whatever I'm doing today is not working. And sometimes to take a step back and for a few days, just let it be over here and then revisit is such an interesting tool that I've learned and that I share with my people because, you just want something so bad and you're just like, I want it to be done. And it's just, I always tell people, if you're getting roadblock after roadblock, it's not your time. You just need to kind of accept that today is not your day.
Yeah, we talk about energy and energetic flow all the time. And that's a key element of it. If your energy is constantly leading you into a crash into the wall, well, that means your energy really is not the energy you need. That's the good time to put the energy down.
Yeah.
Just like you say, walking away from that energy for a bit, it allows you to kind of repositivize it. Is that a word? It is now, I guess.
I like it.
But it kind of fits into what you were saying when I rejoined the call. It's that not focusing on trying to get pregnant, trying to get pregnant, trying to get pregnant. It's just let's forget that, and that's when it will happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then we start feeling okay. We start feeling good about ourselves. We start feeling good about, in that case, with our partner. We're feeling good about the whole situation. And up until that point, we're feeling lousy about it. And that's talk about law of attraction. We know if you're feeling lousy about something, you're going to attract more to feel lousy about. It works very well.
So true. So true.
Yeah. But when you start focusing on what feels good to you, and it really does feel good to you, then the good things start to happen. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time I encountered that was encouraging.
Sorry.
I was just saying, I remember the first time I realized that really was true. It was encouraging.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Oh, okay. Well,
we're on the same page, Waltz. We're on the same page.
Great minds think alike. I should have let you say it, though. You're the guest. You're probably going to say it. Plus, you're the coach. You probably say it better.
No, we're having a conversation. We're having a conversation. This is lovely. So,
now you also had a book out, which has a really cool title. I like the title. Where did that title come from? The Donut Diaries. I'm curious about that.
Thank you. Well, the Donut Diaries I did think it was a cute, catchy title, but donuts were something that made me very happy as a child. And as I grew into a young adult and a woman, of course, you learn all the foods that have to go onto your naughty list. And of course, donuts were on that list. And when I decided to stop dieting and stop restricting, I was still living in New York City, and there's this cool donut place that just opened up, and I said, I am going to go have a donut. And I know you don't know me that well, but anyone who knows me knows that fall is my favorite season of the entire year. And for that period of time, I ingest anything and everything pumpkin. So it happened to be around the fall, and they had a pumpkin donut, and I went and I bought that donut. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm sweating, I'm nervous. I mean, it was really a thing. And then I took my donut and I went to Central Park and I sat on a bench and I ate it and I enjoyed it. And I remember telling myself, eat slowly, let's pay attention to how you're feeling. And I really just had this beautiful moment with me and my pumpkin donut, And then I was off doing the rest of my day and never thought about it again. And I could have gotten upset, like, you were doing this to yourself for so many years, but I knew that, I was going through this for a reason. So I didn't beat myself up that day. I just enjoyed my donut and went on about my day and started to continue to unpack all that restrictive garbage that was going on in my head.
There's a key thing in what you said that just jumped out at me. I'm curious to know if it was key for you, but it was for me just the way it came out. And that was, you said you enjoyed it. And the way you said enjoyed it made it sound like it's like every single bite you were just, I'm just savoring this thing. And the reason I mentioned that is, now, I've never had it. For the first time in my life, in the last 5 years or so, I actually put on some weight. Normally I had, massively powerful metabolism and it was never an issue. First time I ever had weight was like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? That was a bit of a shock. Since my divorce actually has been coming back down. So it's all, the world is coming back to normal. But, one of the things that I noticed myself during that time and that I've heard from others is that people who have various kinds of weight-related issues tend to treat food the way we treat oxygen. They inhale it. Mm-hmm. And when you're inhaling it, you aren't savoring it. You aren't even tasting it. No. You're kind of feeding a need that you can't even define well.
I used to get so pissed at my body for being hungry. And I would do what you said. And there were times where I would crave something so badly that I would just go to the grocery store and buy whatever, let's just say a Snickers bar. And I would run home to my 400 square foot apartment and shovel it in my mouth, sneak it. There was no way I would ever eat something like that in front of anyone. And I would sneak food because my cravings got to be so overpowering that I just couldn't take it anymore. And I write about this in my book all the time because I was such a heavy restrictor and I restricted many things throughout my adult life that since I stopped doing that and I just give into my cravings when they happen, I have not binged on anything in, let's see, I'm 51 now. I have to do math. Sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
Like
we can get a calculator if you like. I mean, we can do that.
Like 5 years, I have not binged on anything. And that was something that was my normal. I would go all day without eating, and then I would just eat everything from standstill to standstill, whatever was in my kitchen. Or I would completely not allow myself to eat any cake or cookies or sweets. And I have a sweet tooth. Like, why am I not embracing who I really am? And then the next thing you know, I was going to the grocery store and buying everything, all those things, and eating them at once. So I don't do that to myself anymore. I want a donut, I go have a donut. And it could be months until I want another one, or it could be next week. I don't know. But I don't fight it anymore. And I'm just telling you right now that is, that's a game changer.
Yeah, well, I can see that. When you're talking about this with a client, and I imagine this particular point does come up, I mean, do you talk about it in terms of the savoring piece, or are there other pieces that you bring in to help kind of drive the point home?
I definitely talk about that because I point out to them that you probably have not enjoyed eating for many, many years. So let's get back to that. Food is your friend. Food is something that is okay to enjoy. In a scientific manner, of course, food equals energy. We have to eat so our bodies function, if you break it down into simple form. But food, there's so many varieties and there's so many different types of food that I can't imagine we were here on this earth to not enjoy that. So I definitely try to find a happy place or a happy, place for my clients to eat lots of different things and I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Well, let me see if I can piggyback on it. One of the reasons I think that the whole savoring thing is probably very effective in almost every case is because savoring takes time. You can't savor quickly.
No.
I mean, there's just not a way to do that. you got to give your taste buds a chance to actually taste and experience. I mean, it's kind of like the response that, I don't know if you're familiar with, Abraham Hicks, who channels Abraham, a big law of attraction figure. During one of the channeling sessions, Abraham, who's the collection of beings that she channels, was asked a question by a member of the audience. The question was, well, you know, we've been talking about all this energy stuff and, you know, how there's source energy and people are, in this life, but they also came into this life, you know, having some idea of what they were getting into and what they're doing and so forth. You know, why do we come into this place? Why do we put up all this craziness that we're dealing with? And Abraham's answer was, what does chocolate taste like? What does color look like? That's why you're here.
Right.
To experience stuff that you can only experience in physical form.
Right. Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that. I'm stealing. That's okay with you.
Just let them, Abraham, they're the ones who came up with it. I'm the relay. That's all.
Yeah.
But surely that deprivation, that denying yourself is just going to make you focus more on, I want, because you can't have it. Just having it, bish, bash, bush, gone.
Yes.
I don't need it.
It's so crazy how people don't believe me. If I say that, just have the damn cookie, they're like, but then I'll eat the whole bag. And I said, that is the story you've been telling yourself and why you don't let yourself have cookies. So, you know what? If we fail on this first time, then I'm sorry, but let's just try it. You know, let's try it. Have one cookie and see how you feel. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but people who are recovering from diet culture, they do say, I hear this story a lot. You know, I couldn't keep anything in my house that was deemed bad, but now I can have anything in my home because I don't feel threatened by it. I don't feel like it's going to overpower me because I don't restrict anymore. So listen, it's just like every other part of this process. It is a learning curve and there's going to be some mishaps, but I think what I try to do is, you know, help you with that so you don't sit there and punish yourself, because that's another thing that we do, you know, when we go off the diets, is that we punish ourselves because we don't have enough self-control or enough willpower, and that cannot be further from the truth.
That same guy I told you about, Joel Elson, came up with a term one time to describe kind of the process you just named. He calls it awfulizing. Taking something that could happen in the real world and in your mind making it 100 times worse. Mm-hmm. And that's something all humans are very skilled at. We have a lot of practice. We apply that practice routinely to the point where we become experts at it.
Yeah.
You know, and if you take that to the extreme, I can see if you do that in the realm of food and diet, you can awfulize it to the point where you are convinced to eat, for instance, like you said, you're convinced you'd eat that whole bag of cookies, even if you've never done that before, just because in your mind, you've created this scenario where anything I do, I'm going to go off the tracks.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm simplifying it, but it's that all or nothing mentality. It's like, I have to be strict, or I'm going to just eat everything I see. So listen, it's a horrible thing that we've done to ourselves. And it's a horrible thing that I just read an article last week that the diet industry is a $6 billion industry.
Oh, yeah. It's huge.
That seems kind of low to me, to be honest. It does.
Low in what sense?
Because every ad I see is for some diet plan or diet food or diet or exercise. I mean, so it still inundates us in anything, you know, on social media, on TV, on the news. I mean, there's always an ad for you to be thin and happy in some way. It's never ending.
Yeah. Do you think those ads are helpful? I mean, they're helpful to the advertiser. They're obviously doing that because they're generating sales that way. But do you think they're helpful or harmful or somewhere in between to the culture at large?
I think they're super harmful because they're solidifying that you are not okay, just who you are, whatever your body is. And they're promising you that no matter what you were born with, your genetics, your body type, your structure, that you can be, you know, 87 pounds and super healthy and super happy. So that's my problem with that. It never teaches you, no matter what these ads say, or these programs tell you, they don't teach you how to deal with all the stuff that got you to this point. And so that's why, and I always say this, my favorite thing to start a conversation with someone, they're like, well, I tried this diet and I tried that. And I will say to you, yeah, because all diets work in the beginning. All of them work until they don't. And that's why you're here today, because they all stop working.
Why do the good points always come with 5 minutes left in the program?
I didn't hear you. What'd you say, Walt?
I said, why is it the best points come out with 5 minutes left in the program? We could do another half hour on that one. That's like really, really important. There's like 5 minutes left.
Like, back then,
I guess. I mean,
yeah.
Part two. When Anne-Marie's internet is working same.
Right.
I know, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, before we lose you for the day, we do need to get a couple pieces of information. I mean, first of all, we know you have the book, The Donut Diaries. I imagine it's available anywhere you can get a book. That's the way it usually is. I'm sure that's true for your book. But how do they find out more about you and your program?
Well, thank you for asking. And I am on social media under the handle Rachel Lavin Wellness. And trust me, you will know that it's me because in every picture I'm holding my book.
Okay.
Yeah, smart, right?
Little clue there. Got it.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. That's where I put my foot down. And then my website is also Rachel Lavin Wellness. And that's where you can kind of see where my programs, my offerings, all my podcast interviews, and my blogs are on there.
Okay. Anything particular that they should start with when they go to, say, the website?
No, I think it's very user-friendly. And if it's not, please let me know.
No, okay. Fair enough. All right. And then one other thing that I always like to do with our guests, because I think it's really important, that it's not something that gets enough recognition from my point of view, because like all the people who come out of this program, everybody who's coming on is givers. They're all giving. They're trying to help the world in their particular field in their area that they've found their own particular nirvanas. They're trying to help other people find the same kind of thing. And so they appear on podcasts and they write blog posts and they write books and they do this. They're putting all this stuff out there largely to an audience that they never meet and they never see. Sometimes they do, and that becomes, where they have clients and so forth. And that's all great. But the ones they never see, never hear about or whatever, they don't get credit for. Mm-hmm. That's the part that I think is missing. Okay. So I like to take a moment and say on behalf of those people that you've never met and that you've never seen, that you've been putting all that content out to all this time, thank you for what you've been doing. And what you're continuing to do, because you're making a difference with those people.
Thank you. That's very sweet. I appreciate that.
I think it's really important. I don't think we do it often enough, so I want to make the point to do it here. So thank you for that. Thank you for also joining us today. And Anne-Marie, since you didn't actually have the chance to participate as much as you normally would, I'm going to kind of, you know how I always put you on the spot with stuff like this. You didn't get to even hear most of it, but for the person who did hear, what grabbed your attention the most?
I think we can relate it into what Rachel said about the computer issues I had, is just keep trying, keep practicing, repetitive stuff. Just don't give up, persevere, and you're going to get there.
Listen, she only had to be here for 5 minutes and she got it.
You're a wonderful teacher, Rachel.
Thank you.
And we said at the beginning, you're a very persistent person, Anne-Marie. You just keep persisting and persisting and persisting and persisting. Yeah. And you finally get there.
He's been trying to get rid of me for years, Rachel, but I just won't go.
I can't believe that's true.
Not true. Not true at all. Not true at all. Just the opposite. Actually, she's been one of the most important people in my life. So.
That's very lovely.
So anyway, thank you very much for joining us, Rachel. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye.
Thank you.